Welcome to the No Sugarcoating podcast. I am Amber Romaniuk, emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert. I am also the founder of amberapproved.ca. I support professional women achieve optimal health through mindful eating, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. This podcast provides the honest truth on what you really need to create body freedom. The No Sugarcoating podcast provides information on healthy living, lifestyle changes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. Always seek the advice of your healthcare practitioner regarding your health and nutrition program. Hello, everybody. Happy episode 180. I can't believe I'm on 180. It's crazy. Where's the time gone? This year is flying by. Sharing these episodes with you is flying by. And I thank you for being along for the ride and listening and subscribing and sharing. And I'm really excited to share this episode with you. This week, I am talking about how emotional eating impacts your relationships, projecting your inner judgment on children, and why building self-connection positively impacts relationships. I think that this emotional eating has such a profound impact on all areas of life, and relationships are a huge part of that. And as I touched on last week in episode 179, I see a lot of people whom the relationships they've had have had a huge impact on their relationship with food. Hence why I wanted to dig deeper into that this week. The show notes for today's episode can be found at amberapproved.ca/podcast/180. It just sounds so cool to say that. A friendly reminder to subscribe to the No Sugarcoating podcast on all podcast apps. It's, of course, the one with a photo of yours truly. You can click the link in the show notes. As well, you can listen to all episodes at amberapproved.ca/podcast. And I'm working on a new website, side note, and it'll be a little while till it's done, but I can't wait for you guys to see it because it's just so awesome. I've been in business for almost 6 years now, and it's just an updated reflection of me and who I am, and I've grown so much in the last 6 years, so I can't wait to show you. And I was just thinking about the amberapproved.ca, and yeah, so I can't wait. I will announce it when it's ready. So it's spring, it's time to refresh, it's time to feel really light emotionally and physically in your body. It's time to have happy digestion and kick the bloated stomach out the door. It's time to feel comfortable in your clothes. It's time to build bigger energy levels and strengthen your self-care habits, build that healthy relationship with food. As you've been hearing me talk about, I am launching my spring Jump Into Your Body Freedom group program in May. And there are so many wonderful things we're going to be working on, including cravings, emotional eating, digestion, body image, self-care, and building a more balanced schedule, and a lot of other great goodies in there. This is an online program. We connect online. It's a really great setting. It's all women. There's a private Facebook group, and we connect every week for 8 weeks. And the transformation that happens even in 8 weeks is pretty cool to witness because a lot changes for these people and they build awareness. So if you're interested to learn more and you're ready to invest in yourself and in something like the 8-week group program, then be sure to email me at info@amberapproved.ca with the subject line group program. The first 5 spots are available for 50% off, and I have 3 of those spots left. So definitely, if you're wanting to take advantage of the 50% savings, email me again at info@amberapproved.ca with the subject line group program. We'll book a 30-minute body freedom call, have a wonderful connection conversation, see if it's a right fit for both of us, and go from there. I look forward to connecting with you. And if you're wondering if you're struggling with emotional eating, then be sure to take my emotional eating quiz and or watch the emotional eating video series at amberapproved.ca. Both of those are my gifts for you to help you build awareness, and the links are both available in the show notes below. Sometimes it just takes doing a quiz or watching a video to get a deeper level of awareness or to know you're not alone, and that there is support available. Last but not least, make sure you are following me on Instagram, which is my name, at Amber Romaniuk, as this is where I share a lot of great recipes, emotional eating content, self-love, self-care, health related posts, Instagram stories, lives, and much more. I really put my heart and soul into my Instagram content, just like this podcast. And I hope that it inspires you in some way as well, and you love the content as well. So again, that's at Amber Romaniuk. If you would like to leave a review or a 5-star rating to support the podcast, you can do so on your phone or computer by going to podcasts and searching for the No Sugarcoating Podcast. Even if you're subscribed to me already, this is how you need to find the show. Once you're on my main page, you can click on reviews, write a review in purple. Again, if you want to add 5 stars, you can, or you can go to amberapproved.ca/review and it will take you to the page where you can follow the steps that I've just shared. Reviews and ratings really support me in that when new listeners come along or new people come along and are curious to listen to the podcast, it allows you to share your experience of what has inspired you, what you've learned, what you love about the podcast, and it helps other potential listeners get an idea of what fellow listeners think. So I do appreciate all the love that you've given. If you have questions, you can email them to me at nosugarcoatingpodcast@gmail.com. I please ask that questions are no more than 150 words in length, as health histories need more support and one-on-one coaching will probably be a better fit. And if you are finding a specific eating style is not working for you, you're struggling with emotional eating, food addiction, digestive issues, belly bloat, inflammation, perhaps you suspect your hormones are out of balance, your self-care continues to be a struggle, you're fighting with your weight, your body, and you're connecting with this podcast, well, let me tell you, I'm going to continue to explore all of these topics, diving into the habits and mindsets to set you on a different path. Amber Approved offers private coaching for hormonal imbalances, weight loss and digestive issues, emotional eating, and more. Contact Amber at amberapproved.ca to book your 30-minute complimentary consultation today. So first point today is how emotional eating impacts your relationships. So I personally believe that emotional eating has a very deep impact on relationships, whether it's your personal, your spouse, your kids, your coworkers, your family, your friends, and of course, biggest is the relationship you have with yourself. So I want to talk a little bit about relationship with yourself first. And then we're going to go into relationships with others because I think it all is equally as valuable. So, of course, when we struggle with emotional eating, when you have low self-worth, when you're insecure, when you're picking your body apart every day, just wishing you could be thinner and that you won't allow yourself to be happier or enjoy life to the fullest until you are thinner or a certain size or a certain number on the scale, limiting your life, you're really restricting the relationship you could have with yourself, and you are punishing yourself from being able to live your life to your fullest by going, well, no, you're not a certain way, therefore I hate you, I don't love you, you're not good enough, and there's all this negative self-talk, and you're literally in a fight with yourself. And that fuels more insecurity, that fuels anger, frustration, sadness, hopelessness. It can take people to dark places. It definitely took me to a dark place. Hence going through my food addiction and being alone for a very long time and, thinking that having somebody else there was going to fix it all for me, which I'm going to talk more about. But when we put those limits on and then you have to go on the restrictive diet, then you're punishing yourself with restriction and diets and crazy extreme exercise and eating styles. And then you're struggling with different physical symptoms like bloating and pain, and you're tired all the time and you have such bad cravings, and then you're falling off the wagon and you're binging and you're, again, punishing your body because binging is an act of self-hate. It really is. Emotional eating, binging, compulsive eating, they are all an act of self-hate. You do it to punish, to suppress, to numb. It is all connected. And a lot of people, when I say that to them, and of course I mean it with love, but when I read it for the first time and I read that binging is all about self-hate, it shocked me, but it didn't surprise me. And I was like, wow, I just had to come clean with it that I really did hate myself and I was punishing myself. And I didn't know how to build self-love. I didn't know what that looked like or felt like. It was kind of scary as well. All I knew was to eat and to be obsessed with weight and to punish myself and be superficial and talk negatively to myself. That's all I knew. And part of that was just because of how I grew up and the pressures of society and just some experiences that I had when I was younger And food was always seeming to be there. I always kind of revolved my life around food. And therefore, I didn't realize how big of a struggle I had with my food addiction until I started to delve deep into it and work through it and realized how much of it was emotional and that there was a void. There was a lack of self-love. I didn't know how to love myself, and the punishment of the restriction and the weight loss and denying myself of living my life to the fullest and then binging was all continuing to create a bigger gap between me learning how to love myself and build connection with myself. So that was huge to have to go through that and to realize that. Like, that took time, and that took digging, and that took falling back into binging multiple times. I can't even tell you how many times I fell off the wagon and fell back into self-sabotage with food. But each time I did, I learned something, and I learned how the relationship I had with myself was not healthy, and that I wanted to build a healthy relationship with myself. It's just that I knew it was going to take time for me to get there, and that it was going to take a lot of learning and being open to trying different things and treating my body with kindness and love and unraveling these old mindsets and patterns and beliefs that it was all about weight and weight loss and numbers and dieting and being perfect on a diet. It's not about any of that at all. But when we don't feel good enough, tied into society's conditioning and what our friends are doing and what the celebrity's doing and XYZ, then we assume that that's the path to take, when actually that's probably the path that's going to keep you stuck for a very long time and not see different results. Because as the famous quote goes, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting to get different results. It just doesn't happen, and then you feel hopeless. So I really believe the relationship with self is the biggest thing. And I know for me, when I think I was 21 when all of this happened, when it all hit the fan, and I delved deep into the binge eating. So I'd gotten really thin, and that wasn't sustainable, and I obviously didn't love myself at all. And then I started binge eating, and then that happened for the next two really bad for the next year. And then the second year I started to get a handle on it. The third year it was better. And then the fourth year I had stopped and was more so embarking on the emotional journey of really learning how to love myself, balance my hormones and digestion, and really fill that void. And then from there, when I was about 25, that's when I started my business, and so much growth and learning has happened since then upon strengthening my relationship with myself and boundaries, and then feeling the love. It's a beautiful feeling, and it makes me a bit emotional because everybody deserves to feel it. And I'm so grateful and thankful that the universe has put me through what I had to go through to get to the other side, to learn how to love myself. Trust me, it was not fun at the time. I have loving compassion for all of you if you are struggling. I know it's not fun. I know what it feels like, and just know that if I could do it, it's so possible for anybody to go through and build a healthy relationship with yourself and forgive yourself and move forward and open up to a beautiful life. I wouldn't have my business if I wouldn't have overcome that. I wouldn't be here recording this podcast. I don't think I'd be in the beautiful relationship I'm in with the man that I'm with now if I wouldn't have been dealt that hand and gone through that and had the courage to overcome it, and just feel so committed to learning how to love myself and to end the fight. And most of all, I wouldn't have peace with myself and with food, and my weight would be going up and down 30 or 40 pounds every other month, which was sure to have a serious impact on my health in the long term if I would have kept on doing that, because it sure had enough of a serious impact in what was a short period of time over only a few years. But it is beautiful what becomes possible when we do create a healthy relationship with ourselves. And I'm obviously going to talk a lot more about that in point 3. So now I want to just shift gears a bit to talk about relationship with others. So I've touched a bit on relationship with yourself. You're a lot lighter. You're a lot happier. You can navigate stress more easily. And one thing that happens when you are struggling with emotional eating, when it pertains to other relationships, especially your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife, whatever you want to call them, I often find people will project on others. So hence, if you're feeling in a negative mood, if you're angry, you're frustrated, you're sad, you had a bad day, oftentimes I find, and I've even had clients tell me this, and this used to be me all the time, and love and compassion to us all because we're human, but projecting, getting angry, blaming your stuff on others. This is your fault. This happened because of you. Putting it on your coworkers, freaking out on your children, your friends, your parents, again, your spouse being a big one because you're probably spending a lot of time with them, but you're getting angry and it's creating conflict. And it's like, how much conflict is possibly created from your inner anger, frustration, and hate with the relationship you have with yourself and with food? And how much conflict do you think would be resolved if you were free of that fight and you had a healthy relationship with yourself and with food? Because I know it's probably a lot. Like I even had a client say last week, yeah, like I got triggered and then I ate, and then she's like, I yelled at my husband and made it all his fault, even though it had absolutely nothing to do with him. But because that self-sabotaging mindset took over and she didn't want to, at the time, take responsibility, all of a sudden it was because of him, even though he didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, when that happens, of course, conflict's going to be created because the other person's probably going to want to defend themselves because they didn't do anything wrong. And if they did, well, of course, you have a conversation about that. But then she came back and was like, wow, I apologized. And we had a great conversation. And she's like, I realized how important it is for me to take responsibility for my emotions, for my self-sabotaging behavior, and to work on not taking it out on him. I know they say that the number one reason for divorce is finances, but I would be really curious to know if they did a study on like people who are struggling with like addiction and food addiction and like lack of self-love, like how many divorces actually come from that, or how much conflict comes from that. Because I can guarantee you a lot comes from that because of the blaming and the projecting, the lack of respect. So I often find when people don't respect themselves to some level, they, even if you fully love your partner, you will still disrespect them because you don't know how to respect yourself. And so when that disrespect happens between the two of you, of course, that creates conflict. And part of it is the disrespect of your body, of that you're sabotaging, you're restricting, counting calories, you are rejecting yourself because you're not a certain weight. And then therefore you may find that you're, projecting that disrespect on the other person or on your coworkers or other people. I know in my only other serious relationship, which was over 10 years ago, most of the conflict, like I believe, and I take full responsibility and I'm so over it, but I believe that most of the conflict was created by my insecurities, my blame, my self-hate, and that I was expecting someone else to fulfill me. Hence, obviously, why it didn't work. And I'm grateful for that because looking back now, obviously, it wasn't meant to be. And I learned and have grown so much since then. And now I'm in an amazing, beautiful, healthy relationship where each of us have so much respect for each other and neither of us blames each other for everything. We don't project. And maybe in the rare occasion where we do have a small argument, we're not yelling, we're not calling each other names, we're not disrespecting each other. We are not doing anything like that because of the high level of respect that we have for ourselves first, and then that we bring into the relationship. I don't blame, I own and take responsibility for my feelings and actions, and so does he. And that really creates a beautiful, healthy relationship where we create a safe space for each other to come and support each other. And we work on our stuff and we support each other working on our stuff. And therefore we grow together, we learn together, but we don't try to control the other person or force the other person to change, right? It's like we're each on our own paths as a human and we come together and get to grow and support and share that path together. But when I am owning and taking responsibility for my stuff, I don't need to control someone else. I don't need to put it on someone else. It's my stuff. It's my responsibility. And obviously, if there's anything that's collectively ours, well, then it's important to bring it to the table. Never had I ever would have done that before if I wouldn't have learned how to love myself. And that's the other piece is when you love yourself, you come together and again, you build such a supportive relationship versus if you both dislike yourselves. I think that just creates more conflict and it creates bigger fights and it creates just a lot of what can feel very unsettled and uncomfortable. So, of course, as I mentioned, one of the impacts of emotional eating on relationships is blaming others for your problems, whether it's your spouse or it's your coworkers or your boss or friends or family. I used to do this back in the day. What was it like? 9 years ago. I actually worked at Lululemon. I just was on the floor, like educating and selling product. And I was at my heaviest. That's when my food addiction just like blew up. and I was miserable and I was really rude, like not on purpose, but I was negative, really negative, and I mistreated my coworkers. And one day my boss sat me down and she said, you know what? We've been getting complaints. People find you really negative, blah, 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 blah. And it was actually like a great wake-up call for me because, well, I kind of knew it, I didn't. And her telling me really made me start to think about how my sabotage and my fight with myself, how I was letting that project onto other people and it wasn't their fault at all. And then there would be times when there's just certain people where you work with, you have like different like ideals and opinions. And so I'd sometimes give my power away to some of those people, and then it would trigger me to leave work and then go to the store and buy all the food and binge. And I'd blame it on them. It's their fault because they made me feel like this. But what it really was my own insecurities and not knowing how to stand up for myself and learning to just not care as much what other people think was definitely another part of it. The other thing as well was when I had that wake-up call, it really helped me to start shifting my mindset, and it really started to help me to see that I didn't want to be in this deep fight and I didn't want to have my weight gain dictate my happiness or my self-worth. So it actually at the time again really helped me to make some changes. But blame and blaming others for your, oh, it's your fault because I binged. You triggered me to emotionally eat. And it's like, well, no, if you're aware and you start to become aware of what triggers you and you're overwhelmed and you're not taking enough time for yourself and you're not willing to take responsibility and own your stuff, well, then it seems easier to blame, but at the same time, it doesn't resolve the issue. When we can learn how to own and take responsibility, even if it feels uncomfortable, that is very empowering. It really is. I haven't blamed someone for anything of mine for such a long time, and it's such a good feeling. Yeah, it's uncomfortable sometimes to own your stuff and take responsibility, but it is part of the journey. Another thing is perhaps you take out your stress and emotions about your body image, your low confidence on your coworkers, as I just was mentioning. Perhaps you miss out on promotions or business growth because of your constant negative thinking. Perhaps you don't take that speaking opportunity. Perhaps you don't take the leap to start your own business. Perhaps your level of success is actually being highly negatively impacted because of the way that you're treating yourself and the way that you're treating others around you. I've observed this, in fact, in many potential collaborations I've done in my business. And I've lovingly observed people who want to have extreme control with a collaboration or a workshop or a podcast or a post. And what I often observe is below that is the fear of losing control with their body. They don't feel good enough. They don't have, they're losing control with their schedule. They're all over the place. There's no balance. They're not happy. They're struggling with the body image. So therefore they try to grasp for control wherever they can have it. And I've quickly come to learn that obviously those are not the kinds of collaborations I want to be a part of, but it's just so fascinating to see other people really doing that and how it obviously has a huge negative impact on like working together with someone else in a business setting. So it's very fascinating. And of course, all the love and compassion to the people who are struggling with that, but just know there's a beautiful opportunity to actually work on that and not want to take over such deep control because you need to deal with your inner stuff first. Another thing that I've also observed is different clients that I've worked with having different coaches, especially when it comes to health and well-being and also business in some regard, but mostly health-related coaches. And because that coach that they were currently working with at the time had not worked through their own limiting beliefs and their own sabotage with food fully and done the work, that the conditioning and the limiting, like restrictive recommendations were being told to the client. So for example, I had one client come to tell me and she said, oh, the last person I worked with, they said that I couldn't eat after 7 p.m. and that I couldn't have carbs in the evening or I wouldn't lose weight. And to me, I was like, well, this is just an old limiting belief, old conditioning, these rules that obviously probably were not dealt with that person, got passed on to you. And those rules and the restriction does not serve the client's greatest good. And it can feel very restrictive. And when I talked through this with her, she felt so much more at peace and relieved to not have to worry about, having these rules and having to do that anymore. I think it's so important for any business owner or coach or health, whatever you're doing, work of any kind, but for you to work on getting through your personal limiting beliefs and sabotaging behaviors and keeping it out of your work, because otherwise it can very easily be passed on. And then all of a sudden the clients are taking on these limiting beliefs and restrictive behaviors, and it's actually sabotaging their journey. So instead of you paying for someone to help you, someone is actually unconsciously passing on sabotaging behaviors. So I just found that very interesting. And I've witnessed that in different levels with clients and again, collaborations and other things. And it's just a very interesting observation because it has an impact, not just on you, but the people you're trying to help, right? This has a ripple effect on all sorts of other people. It impacts your life, your world, and that is huge. And if you don't feel good enough, no matter how much your partner or your friend or whomever in your life is for you, you will never feel that it's enough, no matter how much they give you, because deep down you're not feeling like you are enough or that you're worthy. Or if you rely on someone else to make you happy, you probably will never fully feel like true happiness because you're relying on the other person. Then what happens if they're upset? Then do you get upset? Or then if you are alone, so maybe they go on a trip, or maybe you have to eat alone in the evening, maybe you dread it because you again need to have the other person there to be happy. And I'm all for like, great, there, you have people around and they contribute to your happiness, but also if you have to be alone, that you can create your own happiness. And often I find with people who struggle with the alone trigger is that if they are alone, it is a great time to trigger binging or emotional eating because you feel so uncomfortable being with yourself and you don't want to feel uncomfortable. So therefore, let's try and fill the void and sabotage and numb with food. And then, of course, you don't feel well if you binge. You want to hide. Perhaps you don't want to socialize or go on that vacation. Perhaps, and here's a big one, perhaps you don't want to be intimate with your partner, even though they fully love you for who you are and they fully love and embrace your curves, right? And who you are, because you disapprove of yourself. You think that they will, you think everyone else is, and therefore you deny yourself of intimacy. Whether that's cuddling, kissing, more frisky time, whatever you want to call it, you deny yourself of that. And that it's such a beautiful thing to enjoy the intimacy and to be grateful. I know when my boyfriend and I are cuddling, we always say to each other, we're just so grateful and thankful that we have the opportunity to do that. And we're so grateful and thankful to get to have that experience because I think a lot of people take it for granted. And again, if you feel like you're not good enough and your body isn't good enough and you deny yourself of that, like you're denying yourself of receiving a gift from the other person you're with. And so I think that intimacy is huge. Or perhaps it's that you're always asking for validation from your partner. Do I look thin? Have I gained weight? Do I look fat? How do you think I look in this? Like, great. It's always great to get your partner's opinion, but it's different to pull someone else into your insecurities to then expect them to build you up. Like never once. And I was thinking about this before I recorded today. And this is a huge celebration for me because in my almost 3.5 years of being with my current boyfriend, I have never, ever once felt the need to get validation from him to ask, am I pretty enough? Am I beautiful enough? Do you like my body? Blah, 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 blah. Because I fully love myself. And truly, I don't need to ask for validation because I love myself. And I'm grateful because he's always complimenting me and saying that I'm beautiful and that he loves my curves and blah, 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 blah. And he would never say anything negative about my weight. And he would never do that because, of course, he's very respectful and he loves himself. And he knows what I went through and that he's very respectful and supportive of all of that. But I just share that because I think there's so much confidence and power when we're not seeking validation from others and when we just know I'm good enough, I'm beautiful enough, I am worthy enough. And it's a bonus if and when someone decides to compliment me versus if we're pushing and poking and making people like, well, do you think I'm beautiful? Why do you love me? Like all that kind of stuff. And I did that before and it just, it feels so yucky to even think about that I did that before, but love and compassion. But yeah, it's just like, you feel so good when you're like, yes, I feel this, and it's a bonus to receive the compliments from other people, but you don't need them to feel good enough. That's the difference there. So some people also, and I did this, some people want to be in a relationship because they think that the other person will free them or fix them from the sabotage with food. And that if you're in the right relationship, you'll stop binging because you don't want to gain weight because you think then your partner will leave you. I assumed this for a while and I'd meet someone like, oh, maybe this is the person that's going to fix me. And obviously it was not the case at all. You can't put that kind of pressure, expectation on your spouse, your partner, having a child. And I'm going to talk about like inner judgment on children. But I've talked to people who expected that having a baby would inspire them to treat their body better and stop binging, and it didn't. Because nothing outside of you can fill the void but yourself. And putting that on a child or a baby or a partner or a business or anything like that, that's a lot of pressure and expectation on someone else, and it's your journey, and that probably won't end up going well or work out the way that you expected, because only you can own and fulfill that void. Of course, you can get support from other people and have loved ones support you, but it's truly got to be up to you. You can share about others, about your struggles with others and talk to them. I think it's important to have and be able to have a safe space to communicate. But truly, again, and I mean this with love, but it is your responsibility at the end of the day to work on building the healthy relationship with yourself. The No Sugarcoating podcast is proud to partner with Prairie Naturals Enzyme Force. Enzyme Force is a powerful and complete plant-based digestive enzyme blend. This complete enzyme provides a protein-digesting blend of protease, bromelain, and papain for the effective digestion of proteins, a wide variety of carbohydrate-digesting enzymes to increase energy and reduce gas production, and fiberzyme for the effective breakdown of fiber found in grains, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables, releasing trapped minerals. Enzyme Force is allergen-free and contains no yeast, starch, soy, corn, egg, wheat, gluten, dairy, sweeteners, artificial colors, preservatives, chemical solvents, alcohol, or animal products. It's vegan, non-GMO, and tested gluten-free. You can check out more at prairienaturals.ca to locate the nearest store to purchase. So now I'm going to go to my second point, which is projecting your inner judgment on children. So I mentioned this last week, but I want to say it again, and that's actually what inspired the episode for today. But at least 75% of the women I've spoken to or worked with over the last 6 years have inherited conditioning from one or both parents regarding body image, diet, being told they were fat, or things like, it's bad to be selfish and taking care of yourself is bad. You have to put everyone else first. You have to be perfect. That's a profound number. I've talked to, gotta be close to 1,000 people, right? In the last 6 years, probably, yeah, it's gotta be around that number already. And coached hundreds. So, and it may be grandparents, it may be aunts and uncles, it may be, old friends and all sorts of other people. But I find that parental conditioning is huge because, of course, you grew up with your parents around you all the time, or whomever raised you, and whatever their paradigm or their mindsets were in the first 7 years of your life, well, your subconscious mind is fully open and you're taking in all the stuff that they're talking about, good or bad. Your subconscious doesn't know any better. And that really creates the foundation of your thinking, your programming, your emotions, the way you take care of yourself. So can you relate? Did you have that experience when you were young where one or both of your parents made comments about your weight? They judge the way you're eating, or maybe they're still judging the way that you eat, or that you're trying to get healthy and they're putting you down for it, or they don't believe in your abilities that you're going to be able to get healthy. Maybe they want you to go on a diet, or perhaps they're telling you it's bad to be selfish. You need to make sure everyone else is taken care of. But in fact, that's one of the things that's triggering you to go to food because you're so overwhelmed and you're so exhausted of taking care of everyone else. That's a huge trigger. I see that for a good majority of the people that I work with. They were conditioned and told it's not good to be selfish, that you can't put yourself first. And that is one of the hugest breakdowns or misconceptions, I think, to be taught, because your health depends on you taking care of yourself. Truly, your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health, it all does. So can you relate to what I'm talking about? What did your parent or parents say to you? Are you still hanging on to it? Does it still trigger you to go to food? Is it one of the reasons why perhaps you've never had success losing the weight and keeping it off? We hang on to a lot of protection because of something that was said to us when we were so young. And that protection, we hide behind it because we don't feel safe. And that memory sits in your mind. And without working on it and letting go of it, it's there. And the body responds to that, and that doesn't feel safe. So the body hangs on to protection. It's very profound what happens. And I know for me, there was situations at school, there was other people other people's parents. So for me, like just the profound experiences that I went through, the first one, I was 5, I went on the bus the first day and I was called ugly and fat by the older boys. So that was a very profound experience for me. I believed it. I took it on. I didn't know anything else. I obviously didn't know what confidence was at that time. I was very shy and timid. And then all through growing up, my mom, whom of course I have all the love and compassion in the world for, she got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis before I was born. And then something I think she in a sense kind of like gave up on herself in a way, getting that diagnosis. And so much love and compassion for anyone who has MS or knows somebody who has it, someone close to you or a friend. It's awful. Like there's no other way to describe it other than it's just so awful to see somebody deteriorate and lose control of their body and their mind. And so, but growing up, like my mom had a food addiction, and she still does. And I think she just will in this lifetime. I really believe some people are meant to overcome things in this lifetime and some aren't. So growing up, there was always food. And I often remember my mom talking about her weight. She gained a lot of weight after her diagnosis. And I sense probably because she was really scared. And I don't blame her. But yeah, so there was always tons of junk food around. Anything we ever did together, there was food. And I think part of her wanted to use food to compensate because she couldn't walk as far to do things, or there's just certain things we couldn't do together. And so she wanted to fulfill that part of the void with food. But yeah, she always talked negatively about her weight. She always talked about how she hated herself. And I was hearing all that. And obviously at a young age, it made me sad because I'm like, I don't want my mom to hate herself, but I didn't know what to do with it. So then I took on that insecurity. I took on this want to be thin because of what the boys had said and just what I had saw my mom go through. But I was always a bit on the pudgy side because of all the junk food I was eating and probably the fear and the protection that I was hiding behind. And then I had experiences where I remember, and I've talked about this before, but I was in grade 2, I think, me and my friend, and we were sitting on, I had like this double tube that you take out in the water and you pull behind a boat. And I was sitting in one end and she was sitting in the other. And my end was just like weighed down a little bit more. And her grandmother came up to us and she was like, oh, considering you guys are the same age, there's quite a weight difference there. And I was like, oh my God, like I thought grandmothers were just supposed to be really nice and like give you candy and give you hugs, not like, bash your weight. Like I'm in grade 2 for goodness sakes. So that stuck with me. And then I always felt insecure around my friend's grandma because she was very judgmental. So it's just so interesting how some of those experiences shaped my adolescence. I didn't know any better, but it was very profound. But I wanted to share that with you just because we've all had different experiences. And one of the biggest ones, and I didn't really experience this, but I know a lot of people do, is that it's bad to be selfish. Shame on you. You should feel guilty for taking time for yourself. You're weak if you take time for yourself. You need to take care of everyone else. The more you take care of other people, the more you have self-worth, the happier you will be, blah, blah, blah. When again, like the more exhausted and tired and cravings you're going to have, and you're probably going to emotionally eat more. And you're not going to be happy because your schedule's filled with to-dos for everyone else and not yourself. I see this all the time with my clients. I've observed this with, people I've talked to. It doesn't work. And it is safe to be selfish, and being selfish supports your health and well-being. And if you're really struggling with that and it feels very like you feel a lot of resistance and you're ready to, look at investing in your health and book a 30-minute body freedom call, email me at info@amberapproved.ca. Let's have a conversation around that, because that is one of the things that's going to block you from full health and happiness. And it doesn't have to. It is about balance, about embracing taking care of yourself. And of course, there is the opportunity to be there for others as well, but not just this match of being one-sided, that's for sure. And often people, and I've kind of touched on this already, but often people, they think that they need to give to everyone else because if the other person's happy, then they're happy. So they seek validation and happiness from others. And if, then God forbid I say no, or I give to myself more, because what if then I upset the other person and then I can't get the validation from them, right? But again, this costs you your health, mentally, physically, emotionally. It really does. So regarding, children and the projecting your judgment, what are you saying around your kids? Do you observe yourself talking about restriction, dieting around your kids? Do you talk about how much you hate your body? Are you negatively picking your body apart in front of your kids? Are you putting yourself down? Are you never asking for help? Are you often upset and in a negative mood? Are you projecting and taking it out on your kids? Are you cutting out whole food groups and saying you can't have like lots of different foods? And or are you telling your children that they need to lose weight and go on a diet and are fat and need to be thinner? Or maybe you're telling them they're too thin, or they're not good enough, or they have to work harder or try harder. And yes, it's great to have your children achieve things, but at the same time, remember how that may impact them in 10, 15, 20 years from now. And being that 75% of the women that I support have had the conditioning from being a child, like, think of how that has impacted their life and how you may potentially impact your children's life in a positive or negative way. And of course, how you're impacting your own life. So if you are, in negative self-talk, what do you think your child is hearing, and what do you think they think about that? And what may they possibly take on from it, right? And as I mentioned earlier, the first 7 years of a child's life, their subconscious is fully open and they're absorbing everything. And a lot of the limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging behaviors that are created in adults come from this first 7 years of conditioning. It's very profound. Definitely makes me, eventually down the road, if we decide to have kids, be very mindful of what I'm going to be saying around them, because it does have a huge impact. And it's not about perfection, but it is about owning and taking responsibility for your stuff. So if you are projecting on your kids or you're being hard on yourself, again, it's just kind of like, what kind of impact may you be having on yourself and them? And is that the kind of relationship you want to have with them or with your spouse or your coworkers, your friends, your family, whomever? This brings me to my last point of why building self-connection. So notice how I'm talking about building a healthy relationship with yourself positively impacts all your other relationships. So first off, if you're fulfilled and your void is full with love, you don't need to take from others. Others will give to you and you can openly receive, but you don't need to take. You also don't need to keep thinking that being selfish is bad and that you need to get validation from others and receive happiness from other people, or think that, well, unless someone else says I'm good enough, I'm not, because you know within yourself that you are. I often find as well when we build self-connection, we have so much more gratitude for others in our lives. You don't take people for granted, and that is a huge thing that has changed so much for me. It makes me emotional because I used to take people in my life for granted, whether it was my parents, friends, relationships I was in, coworkers, and now I take nobody for granted. I swear every day, just out of love, like my boyfriend and I always just tell each other how grateful and thankful we are for each other. I tell my dad that. I tell my, team that helps me with my business. I tell my friends that, because I truly am. And it's so beautiful to not take anyone for granted and appreciate everything that somebody gives you, because it makes your life feel more whole. You spend more time feeling happy and enjoying all the people in your life and enjoying the relationship you have with yourself. So I think that that's just so valuable. You also build much healthier relationships when you have a positive self-connection. You see unhealthy relationships fade from your life. And I've worked with people who have ended relationships because they were part of the sabotage. So you build healthier relationships because you've built a healthier relationship with yourself. I really believe who you are, you attract, and you will reflect back. So that's a really empowering thing. And the more healthy relationships you have, the more positive, environment you have. And that's a really, really empowering thing. You also stop blaming others. You stop projecting on others. You stop spazzing on others and losing your stuff on others. And you start owning and taking responsibility. And that's huge. I think that's one of the biggest things you can do. And at the same time, you also learn how to forgive other people and let go of things. You learn how to set healthy boundaries. You learn how to ask for help. You learn how to say no. And you learn how to have really great, meaningful conversations with people, because you're open and you want to have deeper connection with others because you have deeper connection with yourself. Of course, you build lots of confidence and self-love. You know you're good enough. Therefore, again, you don't need other people to say it. You don't need the reassurance. And when you receive compliments, you can really receive them and take them in and feel grateful for them. And conflict happens a lot less, if not very rarely, because you, again, are in ownership of your stuff. You're taking responsibility. You're open. You're not blaming. Instead, you're wanting to work through things. You're wanting to grow, which is huge. you're open to embracing growth and change, even though it can feel uncomfortable at times. And it helps to evolve you into the person that you are. So I think there's so much to be said for building a positive relationship with yourself. Also, then you pass that on to your kids, other people around you. You're passing on healthier habits, more positive self-talk. And that has a huge impact on the little family that you are working on raising, or the kids that you plan to have in the future. So I hope that you've really enjoyed listening today. I hope something that I have said has impacted you and helped you build some awareness or wanting to make a change or a different action step. As I mentioned earlier, if you are ready to invest, in yourself and go on a really amazing journey, and this is resonating to you, you can email me at info@amberapproved.ca and book your 30-minute body freedom call. The show notes for today's episode can be found at amberapproved.ca/podcast/180. And remember, as I always say, there's no better time than the present to take action on your health. So take action now. It will change your whole life. It's amazing. And you all deserve to have it. So thank you again so much for listening today. I'm grateful and thankful for every single one of you. I hope you all have a beautiful day, a great week. Happy Easter, I guess. If you celebrate that or whatever you celebrate, I'm open to everything. Have a wonderful day. And I will look forward to sharing a whole new podcast with you guys next week. Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, review, and rate this podcast and share it with your friends. You can find me at amberapproved.ca and follow me on Instagram and YouTube at Amber Romaniuk. Join me next Sunday for another brand new episode and another step toward body freedom.